Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi hamd shakirin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidil mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala sayyidina Muhammad. طب القلوب ودوائها ونور الأبصار وضيائها وعافية الأبدان وشفائها وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد كلما ذكرك الذاكرون وغفل عن ذكرك الغافلون. Today, Alhamdulillah, I have three subjects on the agenda to discuss. The first subject is the subject relating to the dead Muslims, those who have passed away from coronavirus, and with regard to their funeral prayers, what is the legal status of their funerals and what is the legal status of the ghusl, the bathing, the ritual bathing which is carried out for the dead. This, of course, is something which enters the domain of the scholars, jurisconsults, those scholars who are specialists in giving fatwa, in giving verdicts. And of course, the verdict has been issued that the ghusl, the bathing of the Muslims who die from coronavirus, must be carried out. Now, the simple logic behind a fatwa, a verdict, is that a fard, an obligation, is not done away with due to doubt. So if there is doubt relating to an issue, that doubt does not do away with certainty. If there is certainty of an obligation, someone who contacted me regarding this, I gave them a simple example which everyone can understand. And that simple example is, if you have no wudu, no ablution, and while in the state of no ablution, you are obliged to pray the fard prayer. In that state, you search for water, but you are certain that nearby there is no water. When you are certain that there is no water nearby, or you have near certainty that there is no water nearby, the obligation of wudu is dropped. You are no longer obliged to do wudu. Likewise, if you are certain that there is water nearby, or you have near certainty that the water is nearby, then you are obliged to search for that water. Likewise, if you have no wudu and you have doubt regarding the absence of water, that doubt does not remove the obligation of wudu. This is a simple rule that even a person who has not studied in-depth Islamic jurisprudence can understand. So what I wanted to mention today with regard to coronavirus is that the coronavirus is killing 11 people in 1 million. Look at the statistics. The stats that are placed in the current media are fixed statistics. Those statistics that are being given in the media are statistics from hospitals. And of course, the number of patients that enter a hospital, you will always find people dying within hospitals. So the number of dead will always be high. But if you look at the statistics of the number of people who died in February and the number of people who died in March, the number of people who died in February is more than the number of people who died in March. But the statistics that are being presented on the media today, which relate to coronavirus, are statistics of ill people entering the hospital, and from those ill patients, the number of people that are dying. But we are not being given statistics of the number of people who have recovered from coronavirus. There is a large percentage of people who are recovering from coronavirus. Likewise, there are the number of people that have died, if you place them in the larger population, they are only, currently speaking, 11 from every 1 million. if 11 people are dying from every 1 million, this would mean that you have more chance of dying from a car accident. You have more chance of dying from a heart attack. That you sit at home and you have a heart attack. More people die from the heart attack than sitting at home and dying from coronavirus. So this is why the fear factor that is uh, out there, meaning there is a fear factor that someone was relating to me today, that a number of people are so frightened that they are not doing anything or uh, actively washing the dead bodies of Muslims because of fear. This fear factor is not something that can determine a fatwa, that can determine any legal verdict. The fear factor is very low. You have more chance of going out on the road and being stabbed by someone than dying from coronavirus. So the fear factor is something that needs to be removed from not only the Muslims, from the general population. Also, statistically as well, that if you watch some of these mainstream media uh, presentations on the statistics, you will find that the journalists do not even question the doctors regarding those statistics. Now, everyone studied an average and a mode and such things in school, but when they give an average, they say they give an average of an age of the people dying. Likewise, they give the statistics in a specific fixed way, that the majority of the people that are dying are people who enter the hospital that already have a weak immune system, and people who are elderly and they have underlying illnesses, like some of the local people that have died in Birmingham. One of the particular elders I knew, he had underlying health issues anyhow. He contracted coronavirus in hospital. So he went into hospital for something else, and in the hospital he contracted coronavirus and then died from coronavirus in the hospital. Likewise, this complaint about a lack of hospital beds, the reason why they have less hospital beds is because the government has reserved the majority of the beds for potential coronavirus patients. So if someone goes to the hospital, they will tell them we have less beds. This does not mean the entire hospital is filled with coronavirus patients. It means that the hospital is expecting an increase of coronavirus patients, and therefore they have reserved the beds for those coronavirus patients. So, therefore, the media machine is placing that the NHS is overburdened. Well, it is being overburdened because it is being engineered to being overburdened, and people are being placed in a state of fright. So, the funeral and the washing, Muslims have fallen into fear. So some of them, when the fatwa was released, they said, why are not the ulama willing to go out and wash the dead bodies? The answer is, the ulama are willing to go out and wash the local dead people. So the janaza prayer, the farz, the obligation of janaza funeral, is a fard kifaya, a communal obligation. This means that people from the locality must fulfill that obligation. Washing the dead body also is a communal obligation. A group of people from that locality must wash the dead body. So what's happened now is people are in a state of fright because they are believing that if they step out the door, the wind will blow and they will catch coronavirus and they will die. When in reality, as I stated, the statistics are that 11 out of every 1 million have died. From a million people, 11 people have died. What status does the coronavirus even have according to the British government? That the British government has, if you look on www.gov.uk, you will find /guidance/high consequence infectious diseases. Under this, you find the following article regarding coronavirus, which is known as COVID-19, what you need to do. So, with regard to COVID-19, which is coronavirus, you have the following from the government. And now, of course, this guidance was published in 2018, 22nd of October 2018. So it's an old article, but it was updated on the 21st of March 2020. So the lockdown was on the 23rd, 2 days prior to the lockdown of the government, the British government, by the Prime Minister. Uh, this article was updated, and this is a government article, a guidance from the government regarding coronavirus. What is the status of COVID 19? What is the medical status of COVID 19? As of 19th March 2020, a few days before the lockdown, COVID 19 is no longer considered to be a high consequence infectious disease. These high consequence infectious diseases are known as HCID. The initials are HCID in the UK. The Four Nations Public Health HCID group made an interim recommendation in January 2020 to classify COVID 19 as an HCID. So previously, in January 2020, it was classified as a HCID. But this was based on consideration of the UK HCID criteria about the virus and the diseases with information available during early stages of the outbreak. That was during the early stages. Now that more is known about COVID 19, the public health bodies in the UK have reviewed the most up to date information. So, this is the most up to date information about COVID 19 against the UK HCID criteria. They have determined that several features have now changed. In particular, more information is available about mortality rates. Low overall. There is a low overall about mortality rates. So there is a low mortality rate, a about mortality rates, low overall, and there is now greater clinical awareness and a specific and sensitive laboratory test, the availability of which continues to increase. The Advisory Committee on Dangerous Pathogens, ACDP, is also of the opinion that COVID 19 should not be classified as an HCID. The need to have a national coordinated response remains, but this is being met by the government's COVID 19 response. So the response is different to these guidelines. Why cases of COVID 19 are no longer managed by HCID treatment centers only. All healthcare workers managing possible and confirmed cases should follow the updated National Infection and Prevention IPC guidance for COVID 19. The point being that COVID 19 is not considered a highly infectious disease by the government health, meaning this is on a government website. So if you go on gov.uk, this is on the diseases regarding those diseases which are held as highly infectious, and this was updated on the 20th of March. So based on this, I want to say that why is there a fear factor amongst Muslims to do ghusl, bathing of dead Muslims who die from this? You are not dealing with the bubonic plague. The bubonic plague killed 1/3 of the population of London in the 1600s. In the mid 1600s, the bubonic plague killed 1/3 of London's population. And the plague prior to that, the bubonic plague in all of Europe in the 1300s, infected many people, and people died from the bubonic plague. But the way the statistics are being placed forward, when you watch the news state 1,000 and something people have died. Every day, hundreds of people are dying in the UK anyhow. Additional to that, throughout the world, thousands of people are dying daily due to hunger. They are dying because uh, they are dying due to hunger. They have no food. Because they have no food, they are dying. Thousands of people are dying due to hunger. So this COVID 19, some people said, why are the ulama not willing to come out to other towns to wash bodies? As if to say, Birmingham ulama should leave Birmingham, go to Worcester, or go to different areas around Birmingham and other cities and towns, because the people there are too frightened to even wash the dead bodies, even though the dead body does not inhale and exhale air. COVID 19 mainly is the infection is through breathing, and likewise through liquids. Even though you can quickly wash the dead body very roughly, you can wash down, hose down the body, you can place a very quick coffin, a shroud, and place the person back into the bags that are provided, or into the coffins. This can be done very quickly. But people are so frightened that some people are saying, why are the Birmingham ulama, or people, the ulama who are validating the fatwa of ghusl, of bathing, the fatwa, and validating the ghusl, why are they not coming out? They announced today also 20,000 will be, they will be happy if 20,000 people died, meaning a minimum number of people dying from this particular disease. Now, of course, the people today, some of them are very intelligent. You can go and check the statistics of how many people die from the flu virus, how many people die daily due to hunger. This hunger that is throughout the world today, how many people die from hunger, is not due to a lack of food. There is sufficient food for people available. But organizations like the UN and such type of organizations, or the United States, the American economy, and a similar type of capitalist governments, do not have fair distribution of food, meaning how food is distributed throughout the world, how corporations run. There is more death due to that than coronavirus, meaning to people dying of hunger. So Muslims in UK and everywhere else should not, yes, they should be precautious, and I've stated this elsewhere, that take precaution, but you should not be frightened. There is a great difference between being precautious and being frightened. There is too much fright out there. Too many people are frightened. I've mentioned the correct statistics, and you can go and check this for yourselves. There is more chance of you stepping out the house and dying with a heart attack or a car accident than dying from COVID 19. So, the government website itself states that the COVID 19 is no longer considered a highly infectious disease. This is not any longer considered a highly infectious disease. Therefore, the Muslims are. Someone is asking that people are asking, why premature fatwa statements and videos released by a single body? How should one derive and apply fatwa? The answer is fatwa, legal verdicts. The scholars who are trained in legal verdicts, and I mentioned before that we do have a factory system of muftis also. What that means, that some people, they do this course, a short course. In that course, they study some examples, samples of fatwa. They carry out those samples, and then they give fatwa. If we did that, we would be giving incorrect incorrect verdicts. Uh, for example, in volume 16 of Fatawa Ridawiyah, so the work of Al-Imam Ahmad Rida Khan rahimahullah ta'ala, he gives a verdict that alcohol and usage of alcohol is impermissible in medicine. Someone reads this fatwa, they quote this fatwa, and they give it out to regarding hand sterilizers. This is an incorrect methodology. Likewise, someone reads the fatwa regarding contagious diseases, and they tell people, La adwa, there is no contagion. And then what will happen is that when they say La adwa, no contagion, people go into contagious areas and they do not use hand sanitizers. This mufti is placing the lives of people in danger. This is someone who is simply doing naql, copying from old fatawa which have no application. or are not in true context. Likewise, a person who is not qualified in giving fatwa, in knowing al-qawa'id al-fiqhiyah, not only knowing them theoretically in their application. These scholars are very few, meaning there are only a few scholars who are able to carry out ijtihad, exercise their efforts in carrying out and delivering the correct verdict. Those scholars are very few. They must not only know al-qawa'id al-fiqhiyah, but the correct application of those legal maxims. Legal maxims are rules that govern the juz'iyat, which are the subsidiary rulings, and new issues that may arise. The scholars observe the situations, and this is why the fuqaha, the jurists have said, "Man lam ya'rif ahla zamani fahuwa jahilun." Whoever doesn't know the age he lives in and the people of his age, then such an individual is an ignoramus, is ignorant. So fatwa should not be given prematurely, that a body of consultation should be formed, scholars should be consulted, especially the elderly ulama, those scholars who have experience locally. There are scholars who have been living and residing in this country for over 40 years. They should be consulted at least in any verdict that is issued. Uh, Likewise, the local scholars, meaning in Birmingham alone, we have many learned elderly scholars who have taught many of the young ulama. Those elderly scholars must be consulted. Aside from consultation amongst the elderly ulama, there must be consultation amongst the Anglophones, the English-speaking ulama, locally first, then nationally. So people in Bradford would start with the ulama who are local to them. There are many qualified scholars. In when I use the term scholars, some people expect the term to mean the likes of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmallah. No, I'm saying someone who has at least studied the works of fiqh jurisprudence under a teacher, has been trained properly and correctly. They should consult amongst themselves. After they consult amongst themselves, then a fatwa, a verdict is issued. Someone asked one of the brothers, when righteous ulama disagree and deliver different verdicts on matters pertaining to the awam, for instance, some scholars state that something is allowed while others say it's haram, will it be acceptable and not sinful? The average Muslim uses their own intellect to decide which verdict they think to be correct. You see, the the answer is the awam will be questioned to a degree where the fatwa, the verdicts are very clear. For instance, wudu is fard. If I tell you wudu is no longer fard based upon an assumption, many Muslims will know that is incorrect. That you cannot remove the obligation of wudu based upon an assumption. The certainty to the doubt must be certainty or near certainty, or it cannot be based solely on a doubt. Meaning, the reason for abandoning the wudu must be certainty or near certainty. So, therefore, the public is divided into three categories. Number one, those who are known as tulabul ilm, students of knowledge, like myself, students of knowledge who can access the works. We are students of knowledge, tulabul ilm. We are students of knowledge. This is why I do not add the epithet Shaykh on my name on Facebook, even though sometimes Facebook forces people to remove those titles. When we started the page, I did not place the title Shaykh, meaning Tulabul Ilm. We can access books of knowledge, tell you what the scholars are saying in their works, or we can, people like myself can contact elderly ulama. A real Shaykh is the like of Nuruddin Itr in Damascus, a real Shaykh, a person of knowledge. Then you have those who are close to the advanced students. So those people who stay with the advanced students and they know something regarding the legal rulings. These two people, these two categories of people will be responsible. They will remain responsible for whatever position they take. There is a third category of people which makes up a huge group of people that do not associate with advanced students of knowledge, do not associate with the students of knowledge in general who may be ignorant of legal rulings. And these are the people who make up the trolls and the people who make silly comments on Facebook and YouTube and insult scholars or cause friction amongst scholars, this third category of people. They will be responsible for their lack of association with circles of knowledge and their laziness of not learning their basic essentials, the fara'id ulum, that which is an obligation upon them. So, so this is the outline with regard to the ghusl, the bathing, washing the dead bodies. COVID-19 is not a high-risk disease according to the government guidelines, in the sense that the death rate is only so far is only 11 in every 1 million. If you contract the disease, how many people have recovered from the disease? The percentage is very high of those people who have recovered. Mainly those people who are dying are people of high risk or a weak immune system, or those people who are elderly. They are mainly uh, those people. Someone asked a question regarding shared graves. That are shared graves permitted due to COVID-19? Shared graves are not impermissible. Shared graves would be permissible if there is a shortage of land or a shortage of graves, shortage of space. This was carried out by the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So ghusl, with regard to ghusl, some guidelines on bathing. Even though I've mentioned the fatwa, I would implore the ulama and the students of knowledge in Birmingham, the advanced students of knowledge, because from the younger people, we are all tulabul ilm, advanced students of knowledge. I would implore a more cohesive method, like Mufti Munawwar Atiq. He was consulted and he issued a verdict, and his verdict was not given by him alone. What did he do? He had that emailed to the to other people to cross check, to reference. In academia you have peer review. Peer review is when the contemporary writes something, but then it is critiqued by his peers. So today we are not advanced shuyukh. We are not the likes of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani or Ibn Abidin or Imam Ahmad Rida Khan or these type of scholars. The scholars that the Tullabul Ilm we have in UK, like myself, we can access the books of knowledge. We can tell you what these scholars have said. We may have some ability of application, but we as an individual, as individuals, are not great scholars. So therefore, consultation is needed. Uh, so all the Tullabul Ilm, the advanced Tullabul Ilm, who are known in common terms as shuyukh here in the UK. People say Sheikh Fulan, Sheikh Fulan. Every student of knowledge has become a Sheikh. They refer to me as Sheikh as well. But okay, this is permitted in terms of, so the person from the total layman is able to know that this person can tell me how many fard there are in ghusl, how many fara'id there are in salah, how many arkan there are in salah, how many wajibat there are in salah, and they can tell you what's written in the books. This is fine, but they must have consultation when giving any verdict in the future. This is essential. Secondly, for the general public, and remember, so the likes of Imam Badruddin al-Hassani rahimahullah, who was a great scholar, memorized Sihah Sitta, 6 books of hadith, Musnad of Imam Ahmad. He had memorized thousands of hadith. He would give lectures, and he was someone on par with the likes of Imam Ahmad Rida Khan in verdict. Out of humility, he would say, Ana min al-awam. That was humility on his part. Me saying we are students of knowledge is not humility. Let this be clear, that this is not humility on my part. I am telling you a reality. We can access the books of knowledge and tell you what the ulama are saying, but there are no real advanced shuyukh here in much of the world. There are very few advanced shuyukh. One of the few that I would mention is a Sheikh Nuruddin Itr, the author of I'lamul Anam, a very advanced sheikh who has reached old age and he has been teaching hadith for over 60, 70 years a student of a Shaykh Abdullah Sirajuddin, rahimallahu ta'ala. Those are really advanced shuyukh. And many of the ulama have passed away since the fitna, tribulation in Asham, Greater Syria. Majority of the great ulama have passed away. So this is the time of tribulation. This moves me to stating that the public should not be in fear of washing dead bodies. It's a fard kifaya in your area that there are sufficient number of people who are washing the bodies. So in the Alam Rak area, in Alam Rak, people listening in Alam Rak, in your area surrounding Ziyal Quran Masjid, there must be sufficient people, volunteers to wash the bodies of the people who die in that area. Likewise, in the Lozels area, and by the way, there are people washing dead bodies for the past few days in Lozels. They have found and they have said they have been washing the dead bodies. So within the Lozels area, there must be sufficient number of people washing the dead bodies of the people dying in that area. Likewise, in Spark Hill and Spark Brook and these areas, there must be sufficient people volunteering to wash the dead bodies of the Muslims that die. If the number of people decreases, the volunteers decreases, all that area is sinful. All the people in that area are sinful. So if people from one area need to go to the other area because people in that locality are unwilling or frightened, they have been mainly frightened. Why are they frightened of COVID-19? Because of the propaganda that COVID-19 is like the bubonic plague. Some people are thinking it's like the bubonic plague. And likewise, the way the statistics are being maneuvered and the way the response of the NHS. The NHS would be overburdened if the beds are solely being reserved for COVID-19 patients and everyone else is being neglected. So additionally to that, the people in their own localities must wash the dead bodies and bury those people who die from uh, COVID-19. This is something essential to understand. The second issue is the government response, which I will go on to in the third segment, as to why has there been such a response by the government. There is disequilibrium or disproportion. There is a disproportionate response between the government response to COVID-19 and a global response to COVID-19, and the guidelines given by the academics that I mentioned on the government website regarding COVID-19, that COVID-19 is not a highly infectious disease. That status has changed due to the new information they have from January. They considered it highly infectious. Currently, as we stand, from 19th of March, that was updated and it is not considered highly infectious. There is more chance of you dying of hunger, as I've reiterated many times. So, the statistics as well, they are being played with. One thing I wanted to mention, the government is placing 355 billion into the economy, injecting 355 billion into the economy when they say 1.5 million people are vulnerable. Why not place a fraction of that amount just for the protection of the 1.5 million vulnerable instead of damaging the entire economy? That I will go on towards the end. A second issue that I wanted to discuss was with regard to food banks. That there is, of course, we had a rush of panic buying, but there is something important that needs to be established by every masjid in the UK. That is that every masjid or major masjid, even small masjids are able to do this, is start a local food bank. Now the masjid does not need to fund this from the masjid funds, because the local people are able to give donations to the food bank. Now let me make something very clear. When I say zakat money, um, zakat money can be utilized. This means zakat money for the zakatul amwal is only for Muslims. Only for Muslims. Likewise, sadaqatul fitr is only for Muslims. So the money that is collected for zakat and sadaqatul fitr, a particular type of sadaqah, the one that we will give before Eid prayer, you give sadaqatul fitr, a small contribution and then generally it was what 3.6 kilos of flour or wheat or barley or dates, and this was donated. But then people converted this into cash. They give cash, and this is collected. The zakatul amwal and the sadaqatul fitr firstly needs to be localized. Some people say there are not that many poor people locally, and we need to locally there are a few people and they receive benefits. This is not the case. On the ground, there are many needy people who are now with the conservatives. Remember, the conservatives removed certain laws. Certain laws have been abolished, like a law relating to elderly people and care homes. Due to this COVID 19, in the new bill that has been passed, the new laws that have been passed, elderly people are more vulnerable, which is questionable. That if elderly people are more vulnerable now, why has the government repealed an old law from around 2013 or 2014, which protects the elderly? That law has been removed. So by the new COVID Act. So this the zakatul amwal and sadaqatul fitr, this needs to be collected. Let me tell you something which some organizations do, what is known as hila. Hila is a legal method by which you bypass the restrictions of the law. How? So the Care Act 2014, the Care Act of 2014 was removed. Check this out. That why did the government remove the Care Act 2014? The Care Act of 2014 was removed, which protected the elderly due to COVID-19, when in reality, the Care Act of 2014 should have remained. Why was it removed? This is something that should make us think. But I will discuss that when I move to the third segment. Just mentioning the food banks, the zakatul amwal and the sadaqatul fitr is only for Muslims. With that money, the people who run the food bank, they can buy wheat and barley and these type of things, and make a list of all those people in that locality and extending the border in that locality of those people upon whom zakat is not fard, and the qurbani in the month of the Eid al-Adha is not fard, and they are permitted to take zakat. There are people within the UK who are permitted to take a zakat, like new Muslims, people who accept Islam new. There are many young Muslim people who accept Islam from non-Muslim backgrounds. When they accept Islam, they are vulnerable. So the local masjid or the local food bank must take down their names, people who have been abandoned by their families because they accepted and adopted Islam. Likewise, people who live alone. There are numerous people who can take Zakatul Amwal. The food bank supplies them, those Muslims. Unlike these fraudulent charities that they took Zakatul Amwal and redistributed it for dinners for people. So rich people who are already gluttonous and fat, they will come and eat from those dinners, and people who are not permitted to take from Zakatul Amwal, some of them even organize dinners for Zionists. That is impermissible. The Zakatul Amwal must be redistributed amongst Muslims who are permitted to take the Zakat, and the Sadaqatul Fitr who of those people who take Zakatul Amwal. So likewise, a second fund can be established, where in the second fund general donations are given, and then the general donations are permitted for less needy people, but who may be going through difficult times, and likewise non-Muslims, a fund for the general population, the general public, poor people who are unable to afford food. A fund can be made for them, and they take from an open fridge, that they can come and take food from the fridge. In Banbury Masjid, they already have this. When I went to Banbury Masjid, I was standing and discussing with one of the brothers from Banbury, and a man came and he opened the fridge and he took food. A non-Muslim, he opened the fridge. He was an Englishman. He took food and he went. This is permitted. So the local shops can fund the local food banks. This is something essential that we must work on now. I have contacted a few masajid and a few committee members, whoever I have in my contact list, to carry out this project throughout Birmingham, even though it has been done by one or two masajid, but it needs to pass on. This virus of opening food banks needs to pass on, unlike the virus of COVID-19. With COVID-19, one local imam contacted me and said after this verdict was given that people's bodies should cannot be washed, they do not need to be washed, his father, who is a hafiz of the Quran, became frightened. Why did he become frightened? He became frightened because he said, all my life, 70 years of my life, I have taught and studied the Quran, and now if I die of this COVID-19, I will die without a ghusl and without a burial. This fright entered his heart. But is this fright something that has been engineered? The answer is yes, because COVID-19 is not as contagious as they are making it out to be in terms of it being a highly infectious disease. It is infectious, it does kill people, but it is not highly infectious according to the government itself. Secondly, we are Muslims. We are the descendants of Khalid bin al-Walid. We are the descendants of Sayyiduna Ali bin Abi Talib, Karamallahu wajhul kareem. We are the descendants of Sayfun min suyufillah, a sword from the swords of Allah. We are the descendants of Asadullah al-Ghalib, the lion of Allah, Ali bin Abi Talib, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Why should we be frightened to such an extent that if our, may Allah never make this happen, that if our father or grandfather passes away, that when they pass away, we are so frightened that we cannot even perform their ghusl. We cannot even bathe them. When in amongst the non-Muslim population, you have over 400,000 volunteers volunteering for the NHS. Over 400,000 volunteers for the NHS. And amongst Muslims, we do not even have localized people volunteering to go and wash dead bodies. What kind of iman, strength of iman have we acquired? Remember this COVID-19, and this moved me now to the most important aspect, that the COVID-19 is a real disease, a real virus. Yes, the virus is contagious and people have died. But what has happened also is that this virus has been exploited to an end. What is that end? There are two things demonstrating to you that this virus has been exploited. Number one. Number two, explaining to you why this virus has been exploited. With regard to the first, I've mentioned statistics, that the statistics, when you watch the news, do not be docile while watching the news. When you watch the news critically, with a critical mind. That when they are saying this many people have died in total from this virus, there are various illnesses that people die from every day. And also, there, if you go online and you look at the number of people, there is a world counter where you can watch the number of dead every day. That has not increased in large amounts, meaning people are dying every day of hunger, as I mentioned already, that people are dying in large amounts due to hunger. But world governments have never been moved to remove hunger from the world. That there are people in Africa, because of the IMF, International Monetary Fund, which was founded by these people, because of the World Bank, because of high interest rates, because of these government organizations, because of these same institutes, like the World Health Organization, which advises the people. So 1.5 from every 1 million people in the UK have now died from coronavirus as of today. 15 from every 1 million people in the UK have now died from coronavirus. The 15 from every 1 million. 15 people. But there are, of course, other diseases and accidents and numerous things that occur every day. But with regard to hunger, that these institutions, these organizations, uh, that founded the World Bank and the IMF, International Monetary Fund, likewise the roundtable groups, all these organizations are responsible for hunger in the world today. The lack of distribution of wealth, the lack of of distribution of food. Yet this much action has never been taken by these governments in order to remove hunger from the world, as they have done with regard to COVID-19. You have the likes of Modi, who has hundreds of millions of people in his country who do not even have toilets. They need to go in the countryside and to defecate every morning. Some people who went to India, they said they went through a train and they observed hundreds of villagers coming out in the fields in the morning for miles. Why? Because those villagers do not have toilets. This imbecile Modi, he's made a space project and has placed 1.3 billion of his population in lockdown now, and he cannot make decent sanitization in his country. This Modi, even though he placed our people of Kashmir in lockdown, then extended the persecution of Muslims in India. Now he has placed his entire population of India, 1.3 billion people, in lockdown. So the figures of the number who have died from coronavirus is being mentioned, but what is not being mentioned, the percentage of people who have recovered. What is not being mentioned, that the number of people from the wider population, not from the hospital population, who have contracted the virus. So the population from the hospital is being mentioned, and they will mention this percentage died from the coronavirus, but from the larger population is not being mentioned. This is what is being played out today. So there's no doubt that coronavirus is an illness like any other illness, but the action of the governments is disproportionate. To what end? To what end is this being done? You had the U.S. Treasury, the U.S. Treasury placing $2 trillion into the U.S. economy, $2 trillion. Now, what this entails in the long run is hyperinflation. What is hyperinflation? Of course, in 1971, the U.S. dollar is, of course, was backed by gold, but from 1971, Nixon and his government had this removed. So the US dollar is not backed by gold any longer. And prior to that, in the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1945, the world's currencies were backed by the dollar. So in 1945, the world's currencies are backed by the dollar, and the dollar is backed by gold. But in 1971, the gold is removed and the world's currencies are backed by the dollar. So the dollar is not propped up by anything except confidence in the economy. Now you have the National Reserve printing the $2 trillion in order to back the US dollar. But what someone, a student of economy, phoned me and said, it is a good thing that the British government is pouring in at least 400 billion and 355 billion for workers. It's a good thing for the economy. A student of economy, a person who studies in these universities, and he does not even understand that this is leading to hyperinflation. Inflation is tax. You are being taxed. The prices will go up, and your money will be worthless. So when inflation goes up, the inflation goes up, and what happens with the inflation is that your prices go up because the money is being devalued. Now, why are these governments taking these actions? The answer is found in mainstream media, not from conspiracy theories, from mainstream media. You have Gordon Brown yesterday recommending that a one world government be formed to tackle, meaning temporarily, one world government be formed to tackle coronavirus. A one world government be formed to tackle coronavirus. So the G20 20 governments will have a virtual meeting chaired by Saudi Arabia, chaired by Saudi Arabia, 20 governments, in order to discuss whether a world government should be formed to tackle coronavirus, which is not a highly infectious disease. So this, additionally to that, you have a mainstream article which mentions what I stated regarding Bretton Woods Agreement and where this is leading to. We are going to witness not only recession and impending Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, but a crash of the economy. The economy will suffer, and when it suffers, the new laws that are being passed, there are numerous new laws that have been passed. Will those laws be removed once this coronavirus outbreak has finished? This is one question. A second question to ask is, once the coronavirus pandemic has finished, will the old institutions like the World Bank and the IMF, will all these institutions finish, and new institutions that will have more control over people be established? These are a few things that we need to think about. What I would finally like to mention is that this does not mean that I am not endorsing health and safety measures. Health and safety measures should be carried out. What I am condemning is frightfulness of frightful behavior, because the health and safety measures have not stated that the ghusl and the bathing should be abandoned. Frightful behavior is not a part of our religion and faith. We should be precautious. Wash your hands whenever you enter the house. Take all these precautions, whatever the government is advising. But do not be frightened to even carry out your communal obligation of washing the dead bodies. There should always be a sufficient amount of people available to wash those bodies. So those people who are going to volunteer to wash dead bodies, they should come out, contact your local funeral places, and take the precautions that I mentioned. This word PPE, personal protection equipment, is famous now. To use the protection equipment, follow the guidelines, and stay safe. But do not be frightened by this coronavirus, what they have referred to as a pandemic. And likewise, this is not an endorsement of big funerals, meaning with big funerals, uh, what happens, big funerals should be avoided as much as possible. Follow the guidelines of the government with that regard. Someone will say, why are you following the guidelines of the government in that regard? I am saying to you that this coronavirus is an infectious disease, but the government lockdown is disproportionate, and the world lockdown is disproportionate. In order to engineer something which uh, which will be clarified to us in the coming months, uh, many events take place in history that it becomes too premature to state what and who, why those events have happened and who is behind those events, until the event has transpired and history is understood, and a person can stand in hindsight and understand what was the situation at that time. Wait for these few months to go by, and as the days go by, things will become clearer to people, like Gordon Brown's statement regarding a one world government, and likewise running down the economy for to further the agenda to replace the current world order with the new world order. The current world order, remember, the UN, United Nations, was founded on the ashes of World War II. And this coronavirus, what will transpire after, we will observe in the coming months also, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uh, gives us life. Someone is asking, where are these ghusls to take place, as many masajid have closed their doors and announced? The funeral services are your point of contact. So you find out your local funeral service and you Muslim funeral service, and you ring them. Your point of contact is your local funeral services. Inshallah, this is the end of today's live cast. In the coming days, inshallah ta'ala, I will not be discussing coronavirus any longer. I have given sufficient information for people, a thread for you to follow. But in the coming days, with the will and might of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Durus lessons online will continue. I have decided to cover the book known as Al Quduri in the Hanafi school. Al Quduri is a fiqh book. Many of the people trolling on the YouTube, on the Facebook, you need to stop trolling and learn your basic fiqh, basic aqidah. To learn your basic aqidah, refer to my Sunusi Creed lectures, which are found on this channel. But in the coming days, inshallah, most likely on Tuesday evening, I will be initiating Al Quduri lessons once a day, one lesson of Al Quduri. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable me to do this and give me the ability to do this with consistency. Even if the lockdown is over, the lessons will continue on YouTube live. Al Quduri lessons, where you Al Quduri, those of you unfamiliar of the work Al Quduri, Al Quduri is the Hanafi work in fiqh and jurisprudence, what you need to know regarding wudu, salah, zakat, fasting, hajj, legal rulings of jihad, legal rulings of sharia, everything to do with sharia law is covered in that book. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us to tune in and to listen, for the listeners to tune in and listen to those lessons and benefit, insha'Allah ta'ala. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله العظيم وأتوب إليه. One more thing which someone mentioned, which is very important. Rather than binge watching Netflix and YouTube and these type of things, those of you with qada salah, prayers that you have missed, while in lockdown, this is the perfect opportunity for you to make up all your qada salah. So get off Facebook. So the battery died. Just a final issue is that the with regard to frightening other Muslims, how this was done is that people were told that if they carry out ghusl, bathing, or they are without PPE, or without allowing, permitting family members to go in and to wash dead bodies, this would result in prosecution of some sort or whatnot. These type of frightful stories were made to people behind the scenes, and people were contacted. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable our community to be less frightened of this particular illness, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us in that regard. Inshallah ta'ala, I will be seeing you when the Al-Quduri lessons start. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم وأتوب إليه.